It's a crazy world, crazy world. Somebody's gotta have to save you. It's a crazy world. It's a crazy world. Somebody's gotta have to save you.
All right, it's Friday, so time for a round table extravaganza. And joining me are two of my all-time fave guests. You know them already. Dr. Drew from the Ask Dr. Drew show, Dr. Drew Pinsky, and best-selling author and outspoken columnist for the New York Post, Karol Markowicz. One of the three people you're going to see in your screen in just a moment. Can I get the three screener up there? Can we put there we go. One of these people does not live in Florida. Do you want to guess who?
I'm ashamed, but I still can be the brunt of your jokes, and you've lined up a few for me today just to put me in a great mood for the rest of the weekend.
I have a stack full of jokes at your expense right here, Drew. We'll see if we can get you to Florida by the end of the show. We're just going to recap some of the interesting cultural things that happened this week. And of course, everything is always connected to what's going on politically. And then we'll make some predictions at the end. But I wanted to start with the story of Dave Portnoy, because my audience knows I'm always interested in people that are not particularly political, that are just doing other things, building other things, making waves in other ways, that suddenly sort of become political because politics basically smashes them over the face. So Dave Portnoy of Barstool Sports, he is one of these people, and he is now basically had it with the Dems. He comes from a Democrat family and has fully said he is going to support Donald Trump.
I think that what the Democrats have done is far worse than really anything Trump has done. Like, in terms of not allowing a primary, to me, that's crazy. Like, I'm somebody who, if I liked a candidate in the Democratic side, I could have potentially voted for that person. Like, to not give people a choice, and they really still haven't figured out, well, was he not prepared? Like, is he not mentally aware? Can he not run? Is he too old? He just thought he was going to lose. The theory of you just thought he was going to lose is not a real answer. He ran. Like, you have to then let other people run. And if he's not mentally there, which I don't think he is, Kamala has known that, like, and she just lied about it forever. And then they kick him out. So there's so many problems I have with the way she never got a vote. Like, I don't know. You can say whatever you want about Trump. He won the Republican nomination by a landslide, fair and square. And Kamala did not. So to me, that's a major, major issue. Some of her past statements for me are just like nutty. And I don't like what's happened in a lot of Democratic states. So I would vote, I hope if she's elected, like California and New York, those don't become what happens in the United States. I don't know that it will. I don't know that much can change.
I got you down as a Trump guy, Dave. Are you? Are you prepared to say out who you are? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm voting for Trump. I don't know that I'd call myself a Trump guy. Like, if I thought there was a candidate that was better, I would be open to having that. Like, I didn't vote for him I wouldn't have voted for him in the Republican primaries, but I'm voting for him now.
Drew, let me start with you here, because Karol, I think, has been a conservative for quite some time, or on the conservative side of things for quite some time. You, I would say, less so. I don't consider you a conservative, really, but I don't want to put words in your mouth. But what he's expressing there, this frustration with the process, the way it was so dishonest, it was not grassroots. Nancy Pelosi basically has said, yeah, it was because he couldn't win, and Portnoy brings that up. That's not a reason to kick him out. It all just feels so sleazy, and it's bringing together a heck of a new coalition of people, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And you're one of these people too, right? I mean, we as you said, politics hit us over the head. I'm still a moderate. I can't believe I'm on a political show. That's the most bizarre thing in the world to me. But
I'll ask you for medical advice at the end. Don't worry.
Well, all right, we'll give some advice. Good. But the fact that I have really landed on the First Amendment as something that has to be defended. And so that has become a focus of my work and life. I spoke to Greg Lukianoff yesterday from FIRE. He was instrumental in me sort of moving this direction, to sort of waking me up to the fact that so many of our basic liberties, our basic freedoms, including how our government is designed to function. A guy named Paul Alexander pointed that out to me. He also pointed out to me, he's a very decorated researcher and scientist, pointed out to me that the 6-foot distancing had been invented in thin air. He was in the room when that stuff went down.
Mm-hmm.
And he showed me how, as a member of the HHS, he was at State Department parties where the State Department bureaucrats pulled him aside, and because he's a gentleman of color with a heavy accent from the Caribbean, they assumed he was one of them, and they confided him that the government doesn't really operate the way the founding fathers intended it, that the bureaucrats, they ran the government, and these people that are elected just come through for 4 years. We just kind of tolerate and we do what we want. That is disgusting. The fact that a political candidate doesn't go through the political process as designed, the fact that bureaucrats run our government, the fact that our free speech is under assault, this should disgust everybody. And the fact that it doesn't really, to me, is just a sign that propaganda has been turned on the American people. And that's, in fact, what has happened. And it is mortifying to me.
America, listen up. The world's getting more unpredictable by the day. Political insanity, rumors of civil war, an unstable stock market, and now the looming threat of a new global health emergency. Did you know there's a bird flu summit coming this October? It's eerily reminiscent of Event 201 that foreshadowed the COVID pandemic. And get this, the first topic on the agenda is mass fatality management planning. If that doesn't send chills down your spine, I don't know what would. But here's the good news. You don't have to be scared if you're prepared. The wellness company created the medical emergency kit, and every home in America should have at least one of these. They're packed with life-saving meds like ivermectin, amoxicillin, and even a Z-Pack. And it's all backed by experts like Dr. Peter McCullough. Imagine this, no more frantic searches for a doctor, no more emergency waiting rooms, just a few clicks, and this kit is delivered right to your front door. In times like these, having the medical emergency kit is not just a luxury, it's a necessity. Protect your family by preparing now. Head over to twc.health/Rubin and use code Rubin to save $45. Don't wait until it's too late. Act now, take control, and ensure you're protected against whatever comes next. That's twc.health/Rubin. Use code Rubin to save $45. Free shipping. And now back to me. Karol, I suppose you love hearing that kind of passion from a guy like Dr. Drew, who lives in California and probably was voting for Dems years ago. And again, might under certain circumstances, it doesn't matter. But people are waking up. I mean, that between Portnoy and Drew right there, that represents a wide swath of people.
Well, so I would also say that a lot of the times you come to the right with one issue, like for the First Amendment, and you pull that string and the whole thing unravels and that happens all the time. I see it constantly. You might have just the one thing that you care about, but you'll find that maybe your interests are represented in a lot of other ways too. I have to say about Portnoy, I actually think that endorsement matters. And I don't think a lot of endorsements matter. First of all, Portnoy has an extremely passionate male following.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what Taylor Swift is for women, Dave Portnoy is for men in a lot of ways. You know, my kids' Jewish summer camp has Saturdays are for the boys' flags outside the boys' bunks. He matters to young men. The second thing I would say actually relates to Taylor Swift. Portnoy is a gigantic Taylor Swift fan. I mean, huge, obsessed with her. I think he's probably home making like friendship bracelets right now. But what he said about her endorsement of Harris, he was like, great, I'm voting for the other guy. And he showed you could love her. You could follow her around the world on tour. You could still not vote for who she suggests. I really do think that those two things matter.
Drew, are you surprised? And I know the ship has already sailed on this one, so it's not like they're bringing her back in or letting Biden run or whatever. But are you surprised how blatantly they did this whole thing?
Yeah.
Which then it led to somebody like Portnoy being so passionate about it because there was no transparency there. It was not grassroots. Clearly, Kamala was involved because otherwise they had no mechanism other than the 25th Amendment to get rid of the guy.
Yeah, they're doing it right under our noses. And really, the shocking thing to me is what has happened to journalism. If this had happened in 1975, people would have been like, get the Woodward on this. Let's find what's going on here. What is this? We need to expose what's going on. This is outrageous. But instead, the media has become a propaganda limb of the government. Mike Benn says the reason this happened is because white supremacy was declared, or domestic terrorism was described as the number one threat to the country. Therefore, all the intelligence agencies could turn their powerful forces inward domestically, including propaganda. There used to be laws against propaganda, but now the press has become a propaganda instrument. Quick story. I remember the 1970s. I don't know why this stayed with me, but it does. But I watched a 60-minute news magazine, as best I can remember, it was a long time ago, and sort of a Mike Wallace guy was hammering on a Soviet anchor who was doing the anchor of the news for Pravda. How could you toe the line of politics? How could you toe the line of government? Aren't you a journalist? And the guy finally had enough, and he looked up and he goes, "Hey," he goes, "in our country, the news is a political instrument. In yours, it is a commercial instrument. Trust me, there will be distortions." And I thought, wow, here we are. The commerciality has gone all the way over to the political, and it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable to me.
Perhaps we all would have realized that during COVID when every news show was sponsored by Pfizer. It's almost like they were telling us what they're doing. Karol, I want to jump back to something that you said about sort of these endorsements and why some of them do matter and some of them don't. Because Pharrell Williams, who's a popular musician, obviously, he basically, and we've seen a couple of these over the last few weeks, doesn't want to be political. And I think, all due irony aside, that we just showed you a clip of Portnoy and why it's important. I think some celebrities getting up there and saying, "Hey, I'm not going to be political," I think that's equally important.
First of all, his name is Pharrell, old man. Yes,
Pharrell.
I love that. That's my preference, actually. I think that when you have celebrities in all different kinds of ways become political, they do alienate part of their fan base. So I would like for that to be the case. But again, I appreciate that if that doesn't exist, I think the people who do end up endorsing Trump, like Portnoy, I think they take a chance, and I appreciate that.
Adam Carolla once said to me, Drew, I think you know this Carolla guy, he said to me many years ago that if you don't know what a celebrity thinks, then they're a conservative. And that basically jives right with me. Let's jump over.
Dave,
go ahead.
I just want to say, Pharrell's my new favorite guy. I love that he said that. He should be hammering at home. He should be hammering his peers for being so preachy. Look, here I am on the Dave Rubin Show. So who am I to talk about this, right? I have been hit over the head by the First Amendment violations, and I feel like I have to speak up about it. And I want people on the left who have similar passions to speak up about it. But I do not want to preach, and I do not want them to preach. If you have an opinion, go into an environment where people are going to ask you your opinion, offer it, and get the hell back down. Otherwise, follow what Pharrell's saying.
Of course, but there's a fundamental difference. The three of us do this for a living. Karol writes her opinions for a living. I host a show talking about these issues. You, from a medicine and science and psychological perspective, talk about these things. So we're not. It's not like we're gardeners that are suddenly screaming at people and demanding them. And by the way, a gardener's entitled to his opinion too. It's just when they bludgeon you with it over and over. Cybercrime has become the third largest economy in the world, trailing in size only to the US and China. Cybercriminals target people and businesses by exploiting vulnerabilities in the everyday tools we use, like email, social media messengers, free cloud storage, as well as weak passwords. Isn't anyone protecting we the people? Yes, the people at Bunker are. Bunker's an affordable, all-in-one app protecting you against identity theft, cybercrime, and surveillance. Bunker includes patent-pending secure messaging, easy-to-use password management, and secure cloud storage. Why pay for several different applications when you can protect yourself with Bunker for $12 annually? Bunker is owned and operated by security professionals with a long history of protecting the public against cyber criminals and surveillance. Bunker believes people deserve to be empowered to focus on what matters most to them, enjoying themselves while having privacy and security built into their day-to-day lives. There has never been a more important time than right now to protect yourself and the people you care about. So for a limited time, Bunker is offering a 1-year free trial for you and all your friends and family when you sign up today. Download Bunker from the App Store or Play Store using offer code Rubin to get the first year free. Speaking of being bludgeoned, let's jump over to where you live, Drew, California, because Gavin Newsom who is an evil lizard person, as everyone knows, he is coming for the First Amendment. I don't think this is going to work out that well for him, but check out this tweet from earlier in the week. We covered this. I just signed a bill to make this illegal in the state of California. You can no longer knowingly distribute an ad or other election communications that contain materially deceptive content, including deep fakes. And what he's referencing there, he is a video that Elon Musk retweeted that was just an edited together version of a bunch of Kamala Harris speeches to make it sound like she said some stuff she didn't, although it made her sound a lot more sane and honest, actually. Karol, I get the inclination. As I covered this earlier in the week, I get the inclination to try to do some coverage when it comes to political ads. That does not trump the First Amendment, however. And if they think that a law is going to somehow stop what is coming our way via AI and editing and everything else, like, they're just completely crazy.
That's right. Satire is covered by the First Amendment. That's been established. I think that Gavin Newsom just is doing something that he thinks will help his party or his side. And I'm glad he solved all the other problems in California, obviously, and has finally gotten to this. So I don't think that this could possibly hold. I don't think anybody can be arrested or charged with anything with Gavin's bill, but it is scary that he's attempting it. It's attempting to shut down speech with which he disagrees. And that speech, again, covered by the First Amendment, is satire. Maybe there needs to be more openness about the fact that it is satire, but I think a lot of people, if not everyone, understood that it was a joke.
Right. We can have some discussion about how they should label things or something, but what's the mechanism to enforce that, obviously? But Drew, as the Californian here, sorry, that's the last time I'll say it.
Hang my head.
What do you think he actually thinks he's accomplishing here? The law won't stand. There's still 49 other states, and you can't stop this thing.
Well, I have very interesting reactions to this, and some of them surprised me. And to your question, as goes California, so goes Canada and the EU. So, and now Brazil too. So expect a lot. I think he thinks he's a trendsetter. And all I think when he does something like this is the guy that destroyed businesses and locked down, destroyed young people, kept them out of school for 2 years. This is an insane. This is not a good person. I when the lockdown started, I was deferential. I said, all right, he's preparing for the worst. We got to get behind our leaders. Now I'm disgusted by all of this. But I had some very interesting reactions to this bill. One was, interesting that all the hoaxes that are primary platform issues in the Democratic campaign, all the Trump hoaxes, were because of creative editing, essentially that version of AI from 4 or 5 years ago. Interesting. Okay, fine. Number two, this even surprised me more. I looked at this and I thought, oh man, prior to COVID in 2019, I would have gone, yeah, they need to do this. We got to let the government do their job and support this stuff. I literally would have been that way. I'm that guy. I supported the Patriot Act. I was like, we got to do this. Come on. Now I've gone, this is where I've really gone the other direction, where it's like, we cannot give the government any more powers for anything because they will take advantage of it. They will abuse it. And things have gone way, way, way too far.
Karol, so to that point, Karol, what do you make of the mind of somebody that saw that from Gavin Newsom and was like, okay, this is great. Like, he will save us from our AI ads that are confusing us.
Ago. That was me. They haven't woken up yet.
I appreciate the mea culpa, but I want to know about the mind of someone that's dealing with it now. 20 years ago, and Patriot Act, it was largely before the internet and social media. Like, it was a very, very different world.
I would also say, don't be too hard on yourself. Everybody supported the Patriot Act. It was such a wildly popular idea because it followed 9/11. I think when people are afraid, like they were after 9/11, during COVID, I think that they're more susceptible to lies, obviously. And I have to say that my support for the Patriot Act after 9/11 is partly why I was so against all the COVID stuff, because I saw that I've seen this movie before. So it might take people a longer time to wake up, but I think that people get there. I should hope that they get there. But still, as we saw during COVID, people want the government to protect them. They want the government to take care of them without ever really seeing the consequences of that.
Guys,
people who are supporting this are the same way.
There's an incredible, I mean, a breathtaking phenomenon in California that I cannot understand. poll just came out just before we went on the air. It came on my Twitter thread showing support for Schiff and support for Harris. And in California, it's always, and I mean always, except maybe in Huntington Beach and Newport or something, it's always 60-40, 60-40, 60-40. How is it always 60-40? How does that happen? And how does that happen in the face of the extraordinary failures of this state? It's just mind-boggling to me.
Well, that's why I always say they could do it again. They absolutely could do it again. And I think, for all the people that are like, no, we learned our lesson, I think we would all be so sorely disappointed in how many people would just be like, thank you, sir. May I have another? But Karol, this attack on free speech that's coming from Gavin Newsom, he's not an outlier here. I mean, there's the video that's been going viral this week, although it's from July, of Tim Walz saying there's no First Amendment right to protecting against misinformation, which is completely a lie. Hillary Clinton was calling for punishment just this week. She's got her 4th memoir out, which is completely insane. I'm sure it's full of misinformation, but she's calling for some punishment on that. And now there's about 5 videos from Kamala over the last 6 years or so calling for punishments for these things. And we know that they coordinated with big tech during COVID. Right. None of this surprises
Look, if there was a punishment, if there was jail time for misinformation, all the people you mentioned would be in prison. So let's just start right there. Drew was so right where he said that the hoaxes that the Democrats talk about, perpetuate on Trump, it was the AI of just a few years ago where you chop up video and make it sound like he said something he didn't say. Kamala Harris, during the debate where she didn't get fact checked once, said that he said there was going to be a bloodbath if he loses. Obviously, he was referring to an economic bloodbath. He said the very fine people hoax, which obviously, when CNN has already debunked your lie, it's a hoax, it's misinformation. So I guess if Tim Walz is saying we should arrest Kamala Harris, I think it's going a little too far, but okay, fine, let's do it.
Drew, do you think we should maybe not be, I'll just try to take the devil's advocate here for a second. Do you think we should maybe not be a so alarmed because there's always people that want these draconian, crazy things and to upend our laws, but our laws are still here after all of these years? Or is this as alarming as it feels? I'm just trying here a little bit.
Yeah, I know. Listen, I thought I was a libertarian until I met Karol and my mutual friend, Kat Timpf, and I realized, you can't have a heart and be a libertarian.
She's my friend too, but I get it.
But here's what I want people to understand, and it's a little bit off your question, but I feel like I have to say this now, which is if you need the government to take care of you, and then you become part of that 20% of so that it becomes evangelical on behalf of the government and is telling people to mask up between bites, the most insane statement of all, and you make it your business, like the operations man at the SoFi Stadium during the Super Bowl. We're on to you. We're on to you. If you take a pot of popcorn and eat it and pull your mask down while you're eating we're on to you. These are people who are taking their will and imposing it on others. I always wondered, how did the average German become prison guards? And how did that happen? You who are imposing your will, telling people just comply, you would be the prison guards in 1930. You would be Hitler Youth and you would be prison guards. You need to recognize that, examine it, own it, and don't ever do that again. Don't ever let that happen.
Well, that is, I mean, I fully believe that. When I toured with Jordan, he would always say not always, but often he would poll the audience. How many of you think you would have been Nazis in 1936 Germany? And nobody raises their hand. And then he goes, well, that proves that a huge amount of you would be, right? And that's it. My favorite COVID one, I was at Costco and I was buying a brisket and I'm holding like a 14-pound frozen brisket and my mask is down because I was always pushing the limits and being yelled at. And this woman comes up to me, like I can kind of see her out of the corner of my eye, comes up to me from 50 feet away to tell me to pull my mask up. And I was like, and I actually said something to her to this effect. I was like, if you're so afraid of COVID, why would you approach the mask guy, the guy without the mask? Like, and so it had nothing. That's your point, Drew, that you can make people do horrific things. Karol, I guess that's why you moved here.
Well, I would also say, I know, it's in my contract to mention this on every show I've ever been on, but I was born in the Soviet Union. I feel like a lot of people, Nazi Germany example is one thing. Okay, maybe you wouldn't be rounding up your neighbors. But in the Soviet Union, a lot of people spent a lot of time telling on their neighbors, even when the offenses were were not necessary to be told about. Maybe this person wasn't as into Stalin as they needed to be. Maybe they threw out a newspaper that, maybe they looked like they didn't quite read the good parts about, Stalin or any of the people after him enough. I think that you get to a point where the neighbors telling on each other is a very common thread throughout all kinds of societies where totalitarianism takes root. We always have to be careful of that in America. And I think Gavin Newsom pushing this kind of law is a step towards that totalitarianism, not to be, not to mince words about it. It really is.
Right. And Drew, to that point, don't you feel...
They could call Tim Walt's helpline in Michigan or a report line. That was exactly what, Karol, you're talking about. Those people that called that line, you are the prison guards. That's you. Yeah.
And by the way, Drew, you know this, when I lived in Cali, I was having all these people at my house, including you and Susan, to talk about the things that we could not talk about online, quite literally, as it related to COVID and a whole bunch more. So there are plenty of real world examples on this. Before we move on to the final topic, I do want to show you a very real video of Gavin Newsom. This is totally real.
Hi, I'm Gavin Newsom, the governor of California. This is a message for the people of America, given in my authentically recorded, non-AI voice. Thanks to my leadership over the last several years, California has become a world leader in extremist, left-wing governance. My policies were so effective that almost 1 million people are now fleeing the state every year. We even ran out of U-Hauls. During the COVID pandemic, I locked everyone in their homes and shut down businesses for months. Not the French Laundry, though. That's my favorite restaurant. Last year, I cleaned up the dangerous, messy streets of San Francisco, because Chinese Communist President Xi was coming, and I really wanted to impress him. He's my boss, after all. This year, I signed legislation that allows me to take custody of your kid if you refuse to give him artificial hormones and chop off his genitals. Because if you don't do that, you're a bigot, and bigots shouldn't be allowed to have kids. I've also led the way in green energy by banning all cars that don't run on electricity. Then I banned almost all the electricity. This is smart leadership. On my watch, the cost of living and homelessness have skyrocketed. Schools are failing. Drug dealers and human traffickers are pouring across the border. And poop has covered the sidewalks of San Francisco. This is the positive, joyful vision we offer as Democrats. That's why I'm enthusiastically endorsing Kamala Harris for president in 2024. She'll do to the country everything I did in California. Anyway, I'm California Governor Gavin Newsom, and I approve this 100% real message, which is a recording of my voice without the assistance of any AI whatsoever. This isn't a deep fake, and you can rest assured that it isn't, because I just signed an unconstitutional law outlawing deep fakes. No one would dare violate it. Thank you, and science bless America.
That is from our friends over at the Babylon Bee, who at one time were in California. I don't think they are anymore. But putting aside the fact that it's actually just like the Kamala video, there's more truth in that than a real Gavin Newsom ad. I just want to end on one thing with this. When it comes to the AI, and yes, they could edit things differently 5 years ago and everything else, you really can see why the world is going to look nothing like it looks right now 10 years from now.
Yes.
That's just human nature, right? Like we have opened a Pandora's box here. They always get opened, and it just sort of is what it is. Is that, Drew, you think that's a fair estimation?
I think that's right. I mean, we technology zooms ahead of our evolutionary heritage, and we eventually figure out a way to manage it, but it has consequence. But I want to thank you for playing that tape. That is the clearest description, not hyperbolic, non-ironic version of what he did and what's going on in California. The only irony in that video is about the AI and the deep fake. Everything else is non-ironic and strictly, categorically factual. 60-40 in this state. Why? We impeached him, or we recalled him and put him back. What is going on? I can't understand this.
I tried you to get to run, man. I really tried. Karol, last word on this. We're going down a rabbit hole here, aren't we?
We are. I just want to say that I'm definitely going to visit you in prison when you go to jail for posting that. But I'm going to put money in your commissary. You're going to be okay.
Karol, report it in. You call, report him. You need to call the local Soviet.
I've already called. In the little, while you were talking.
Don't worry, Karol. He'll end up at a women's prison. It'll be fine.
That's a good call, actually. That's what you should do. Look, we always worry about things in the future. We always think that we can't survive the moment. This new thing, there's no way we're going to get over it. There's this old joke about how shortly before the invention of cars, they used to worry that horse manure would pile up to be 10-foot building height on the streets of cities. And then they invented the cars, and that was no longer an issue. I think we're going to find a way to deal with AI. I don't think we're going to spend our lives confused about who said what and what was real and what was fake. Maybe we should relax a little.
Although it is 10-foot high mounds of human poop in San Francisco, but that's a slightly different topic. When it comes to nausea, you have to get Relief Band, the #1 anti-nausea wristband that quickly relieves and effectively prevents nausea and vomiting associated with motion sickness, anxiety, migraines, hangovers, morning sickness, chemotherapy, and so much more. Relief Band is natural, fast-acting, and will last as long as you need. It's 100% drug-free, non-drowsy, and has 0 side effects. I use it all the time when producer Phoenix makes me react to clips from The View. Relief Band has an A+ Better Business Bureau rating and over 100,000 satisfied customers, so they're a brand you can trust. Plus, it treats and prevents nausea so you can help avoid nausea from becoming a problem in the first place. Remember, you don't have to over-plan for nausea relief or dose up to 6 hours before a trip. Just bring your Relief Band and you're good to go. Right now, they've got an exclusive offer just for my listeners. If you go to reliefband.com and use promo code Rubin, you'll receive 25% off plus free shipping. So head on over to reliefband.com and use promo code Rubin for 25% off plus free shipping. Let's just hit one last thing. Hardcore Politics to go out on this. Real Clear Politics just released they do an aggregate poll every week. And the numbers are, they're not great, actually. Harris at 49.2%, Trump 47.3%. So that's got Harris up by 1.9. Karol, let me start with you on this one. Should we pay attention to aggregate polls or even polls in general at this point? Because at the end of the day, we know this is really about 4 or 5 swing states.
I mean, should we? Sure, because why not see where the race is going? I would say that a lot of the polls that make it into these aggregates are not the best polls. Some of them are really weak. That's not to say that this isn't correct. This might actually be the picture of what's going on right now. But yes, in general, I don't think that the national polls have ever mattered. The state polls matter more than anything else. I think whoever wins Pennsylvania wins the election. Drew has been lamenting that California is a 60-40 state, but I saw some polls where Kamala is doing not as well nationally as she is actually in some of the state polls because California and New York have soured on her a little bit. So maybe there's hope. We'll see.
Right. And we saw evidence of that in the last New York gubernatorial election, which Hochul only won by about 450,000 votes. And that's after about 1 million people who are obviously mostly right-leaning leaving. Drew, can you make any sense of these numbers? I mean, the truth is, and I know we all live in our own bubble, but I really don't know anyone supporting Kamala Harris at this point. Like, I know people on TV, on MSNBC, but I don't know anyone. I know a lot of people that were Democrats 4 years ago that are not anymore. They're not the most enthusiastic Trump people necessarily, but I don't know anyone that's out there. Harris walls, let's do this.
Young people. Yeah, I know a lot of young people and they're enthusiastic. And when you question them about policy, they just say, don't go there. Just stop. Do you want Trump? This kind of thing. They don't want to think about it. It's joy. What was the Kraft durch Freude? Kraft durch Freude was a very potent Nazi slogan. Strength through joy. Okay, here we are. And I'm not saying they're copying that. I'm saying that must be a technique that is propagandistic and it's being deployed and people are responding to it.
I'm glad you brought that up. Karol, this thing that they're doing at her rallies where they're making it seem like it's so joyful and Trump's rallies are so hateful. It's so actually the reverse of if you go to any of these things. When I have been to Trump rallies, and that was one of the things that turned me around on him when I went to a Beverly Hills, accidentally, I was just driving home from lunch. I went to a Beverly Hills Trump rally, probably around 2019, and I was blown away at the joy and happiness and the Latinos for Trump and gays for Trump and all that stuff. Maybe I shouldn't have been, but I was. But they're doing something very twisted to make it seem like it's all hate there and it's all love at their rallies. Meanwhile, there's not a lot of love coming out of progressives these days.
Yeah, it's bizarre. And the Kamala Harris comment during the debate, like, go to a Trump rally, see how terrible it is. The people that go all the time. They love it. It's like, following the Grateful Dead around the country or Fish or, one of those bands that people follow. people love going to his rallies. They feel a sense of unity. They have a good time. I totally get it. I actually have never been to one of his rallies. I've seen some on TV, but that's it. But it's a lot of the manufactured stuff. Like we talked about the fact that they covered up that Joe Biden was in such a bad place. All of it is the same thing to me. The joy stuff with her yesterday in the New York Times, they sent an email that I torture myself and read every morning. But they made this point that Kamala Harris has reversed herself and become much more serious on the border. And I tweeted about it and was like, where has she become more serious? What position has she changed? Because they've gotten to where they could say anything to get her across that finish line. They'll make up her positions if she hasn't actually said anything to contradict her past ones. And they're hoping that'll be enough. I think all of this is related. All of it is a lie.
Yeah, it's. I would just want to say that you brought up Carolla earlier. He's been predicting for many years now that the way this is all going to shake out is we're all going to be gravitating towards either safe spaces or octagons. And
Right.
Michael Malice says the same thing. He's been predicting that the states are going to all fall apart, and he's predicting all kinds of things. But part of that is that same idea that certain states will be like Florida and certain states will be like California, and we'll all gravitate accordingly.
Yeah.
Drew, as I said to you before we began the broadcast, there is a brand new construction 3 doors away from me. Absolutely beautiful. I'll do your landscaping. How does that sound? I will pay for
Apparently
1
he's
year.
like a drug dealer. He's just taste it. It's all right. Just get
Come
taste.
join us. It's not
1
cold at
year
all.
of free landscaping. My guy Rolando, he's the best. All right, I'm going to do one more thing with you guys, which all people in our position love to do, which is ask you for your prediction. That way, when you get it wrong, I can post it on Election Day or 3 weeks later when we finally get the result. Karol, you first.
Man, I hate making predictions. I just, I'm so superstitious that I just think saying it out loud makes it unlikely to happen. I would say if the election was today, which, so I don't know, but I think Donald Trump wins. I think we don't live in a country that elects Kamala Harris. I think we don't live in a country that elects a candidate that they don't really know and that refuses to let herself be known. I think the media will continue to cover for her, but I don't know that Americans leave their house, go to vote for somebody that's such a huge unknown. And the only thing they do know about her is the last 4 years of the Biden administration, which really hasn't gone that well. So if I had to make a choice, I think that Donald Trump wins.
I like that Floridian positivity. Drew.
I've got a weird feeling that what's the number 270, that it's going to end up in the House. That is my weird feeling about this. I saw somebody make that case once, and I thought, oh man, that could really happen. So I'll leave it there.
That's how we're ending the show, on that dour note of democracy. Karol, what are you doing this weekend?
Enjoying the Florida sunshine. I'm gonna take the kids to a bunch of different sports. I can't wait till that's part of your life and you could be complaining about it. There's soccer, there's football, there's sailing, there's lots of stuff, Dave. Lots of stuff.
Yes, I'm at the we change diapers at the beach part, which is difficult. Drew, what do you do in California on the weekend?
I'm going to New York in the morning, and I'm going to be on Gutfeld next week, and so that'll be fun. I still think New York's the greatest city in the world, in spite of everything we've been talking about today.
Okay, yeah, Karol, let him think that. It's okay. It's okay, guys. It was a pleasure. No post game show on Fridays. Have a great weekend, everybody, and we'll be back on Monday. Thanks.